Be'ez Hashem Yisboch, we begin Perek Chamisha Asa, the 15th chapter in the Hilchos Machalas Assuros, in the laws of forbidden food items in the Rambam Sefer Kedusha, in the Book of Sanctity, which Rambam continues with the theme of the previous Perek, which is discussing in general the concept of forbidden foods. And in this Perek, the Rambam discusses regarding the laws of taroibis, of forbidden mixtures of foods. So Rambam begins in Halacha Al for the general concept. Davar Aser, a forbidden item, shenisar b'davar mutar, that gets mixed in with something that's permitted. So if it's min b'sheinim minoi, if it's one type with a different type, different species, different types, then the halacha is b'noisin tam. It's if it gives flavor, as Rambam is going to explain in the next halacha. Min b'minoi, if it's from the same type that's getting mixed in, she'iyah shalam al tam, that you can't go ahead and ascertain the taste because it's both the same type of food item, then the halacha is yibat b'roi, the nullification according to biblical law, it goes according to the majority, but regarding rabbinic law, that we'll see later on, halacha dal and hay. So Rambam Halacha Beis Ketzad explains the previous halacha. It says, how so? Chaylev haklois. If, for example, if the fats of the kidneys, shenafel otecha grease, and that falls into the split beans, into the bean of v'nimoich hakol, and everything gets dissolved. So, and the fats of the kidneys are forbidden. So, time is like grease, and you taste the beans. Im lo nimtze bem tam chaylev, if you don't taste the taste of the forbidden fats, haril mutar, so it's permitted. But it has the taste of the forbidden fats, and it has inside the substance of the fats. That's biblically going to be forbidden. Like we said, min b'shein minoi is b'nais and tam. Now, if it only had the taste of the fats, but none of the substance, that's only going to be rabbinically forbidden because tam ki'ikar, the taste as the primary, is not a biblical law. That would only be rabbinically prohibited. Now, Halacha Gimel says, what's considered substance, not just taste? For example, there was from the forbidden fats a kazayis, an olive-sized piece, from all, when one looks at a 3 eggs size, which is the halacha, the Rambam says, is kedei chilas pras. From the mixture, if in that amount of mixture there's an olive size of the forbidden fats, then if you eat from the split beans, which is the mixture, 3 egg sizes, since you have an olive size of the fats, like we're saying, the substance over here, and a kazai shear, which is the shear of liability of the chaylev, like is going to get lashes. Because here you have the taste and you have the substance that's here. Now, but if let's say you don't have a kazayis of isser, if you only have less than if you have only have less than 3 beitzim, so then then you get rabbinic lashes because here you have a mixture that's less than the amount of having the shear of liability. So it's essentially only having taste and not substance. Or let's say you didn't have in the mixture an olive size in all the 3 eggs, and that amount of food item, not about little eggs, but that shear of the beans, even though it has a taste of forbidden fats, and he eats the whole pot, but it's only going to bring lash again because it wasn't b'kedei achilas pras. He didn't have that amount of time of eating the shear of a kazayis, which you have to have a substance in the amount of the kedei achilas pras, which is that of a half a loaf of bread, which is that of 3 eggs worth. So the liability is only when you have tamay and mamoshay, and that is the shear b'kazayis in the amount of 3 beim worth. But if there's only just the taste, or if, like we said, if let's say it's going to be less than 3 beim, which again, if you're eating less than 3 beim, you're not getting the kazayis, or even if you're eating more but not within that amount of time, then one will only get rabbinic lashes. Halacha dal, nafal chaylev klois. Let's say the forbidden fats of the kidneys falls in l'chaylev ha'alya, into the fats, the permitted fats of the tail, and everything gets dissolved together. So and here we're going back to that we said of min b'minoi. So they're both fats, one forbidden fats, one permitted fats. So if the fats of the fatty tail was kishnam b'chel b'klois, double 2-to-1 ratio of the forbidden fats of the kidneys, like we said in Aleph, that when it's the same type, it's batal b'raiv, biblically it's going to be permitted. And another case, even if let's say there's a slice of not kosher meat that wasn't properly slaughtered, where you have the slice itself, it's not dissolved, we just don't know which piece is which. Which get mixed in 2 pieces of kosher slaughtered meat, biblically it's going to be permitted. Go based on the laws of majority, 2-to-1. There is seifrim, but regarding rabbinic law says the Rambam, it's all going to be forbidden. Until it gets lost, the forbidden item, simply because of its intense minority, not going to be anything significant that remains that you could still see it visible, like we're going to explain later on in Perek Tezayin. Then rabbinically we're going to consider it as batal. But although biblically it's enough with a basic majority, rabbinically requires that it's totally batal. Now, halacha hey says the Rambam ubakamis arb dava asa. Now explain what we just said. How much has something, the forbidden item, have to be mixed in v'yovid b'oitzim yud? It's going to be lost from its intense minority, meaning it's like almost non-existent. It's like the measurements that the sages gave. There are certain things, sheshir b'shishim, it requires a ratio of 60 to 1. V'yesh sheshir b'meya, there are some things that require a ratio of 100 to 1, specifically Truma as we learn halacha yud gimel. V'yesh sheshir b'mesadim, there's something that require a ratio of 200 to 1, specifically Arul and Klai Kerem, like we can explain later on. Now halacha vav, the Rambam goes and gives this general idea, and regarding certain things that actually will not fit into these categories of the halachas of bittul. It says Ram Nimtzis Lamed. So it comes out, you learn like this. Shekol Yisur Shabbat Torah, all the prohibitions in the Torah. Bein Yisur Malchus, whether prohibition that one gets lashes for. Bein Yisur Kros, whether it's the prohibition that one would get karas for. Bein Yisur Hano, Shenis Orva B'machal Mutter, whether it's something that's prohibited to have even benefit from it that gets mixed into a permitted food item. It's like this, like we said. Min b'shein minai, if it's two different species, two different types, so it's b'nais and tam. It goes according to if it's giving flavor or not, as we said in Perek Tes Halacha Ches. Min b'mina, if it's the same type, she'ef shalam el tam, that you can't ascertain it based on the taste. Again, they're both meat, they're both whatever it is. Then shiur b'shishim, then the measurement is either a ratio of 60, or b'mei, or 100, or b'masayim, or 200, accordingly, whatever the halachic context is. Now, chutz. Here's where the Rambam talks about certain exceptions. Miyayin nesach, except for wine of idolatrous purposes, because the stringency of avodah zara, where has different halachas, and v'chutz mitavel, except for untithed produce. And the reason that is shari efshel l'saknai, because by tavel, one could go ahead and fix it. You could separate the trumas and ma'aser, and there will be a permitted item. That's called davar sheish l'matir, something that has a permitter. So then the laws of bittul do not apply, and it actually makes something forbidden, even in a minute amount, like avodah zara. And therefore these two, avodah zara and tavel, they make things forbidden, even in a minute amount, even if it's more than 60 or 100 or 200, it's still going to make it asur. And v'shalei b'minan, if it's a different species, different type, b'nais and tam kishar kal yisurin, that will be based on if it gives taste like all other yisurim, where the stringency they had by yain nesach was only when it's the same type, but when it's m'shein minai, where there's no taste of the isur in the mixture, that's like it's not here and they weren't stringent, and therefore then it will have halacha bittul. So then halacha zayin ketzad. Rambam explains how so. Tipis yain nesach. We have a drop of yain nesach. That many barrels of wine, kosher wine, have fallen into it. Hakalas is all going to be forbidden. Like we're going to explain, where even a minute amount, kosher, even if you have 1,000 to 1, 2,000 to 1, doesn't make a difference. It's all going to be asur. The other case that we just brought in the previous halacha, a cup of untithed wine. It gets mixed into a barrel of kosher wine. A kol table, everything is going to be treated as table. Until you separate the trumas and mice that's fit for this mixture, meaning according to whatever the amount of table that's mixed into this mixture. And what one does is either take it from inside here, or another type of table that's rabbinically obligated, because here also it's only rabbinically obligated, because again, biblically, really, it's batal b'roiv or b'shishim, so it's only rabbinically mandated. But again, you could fix it, so therefore, it's called davar sheish l'matirin, and therefore, just like avodah zara is also kosher, so too over here by table. Like we explained in this place in the halachas of trumas in the 13th chapter. Halacha chas, perish shvius, the laws of the shemitah fruits before it's the time of beer that you have to get rid of it. So afa pishim nis over b'minon b'kol shuhu, even though if it gets mixed into its same type, it prohibits it even just minute amount. Which that means to say you have to eat that whole mixture before the time of beer with the sanctity of the Shemitah produce, which has certain criteria, as the Rambam explains in Hilchos Shvius. V'shalei b'min b'nais tam, and if it's not its type, okay, then it's sufficient. It can be prohibited only if it gives a taste. Says the Rambam, and we're talking about the exceptions here to the general rules. Einam b'chlal quote unquote isuri Torah. They're not included in the prohibited Torah elements, where it's going to have the klalim we said before. Because because that mixture is not quote unquote forbidden. It's just you have an obligation to eat that mixture with the Shemitah sanctity, which that's an obligation on the person, and it's not a prohibition in the actual pre itself. Like we can explain in its place in halachas Shemitah b'yovel and Perikei halacha aleph, and therefore it's going to have a different halacha. Where if it gets mixed b'minoi, we said it's going to be b'kolshu. So unlike the halacha that we said, where we opened up, we said regarding min b'minoi, halacha is that min ha-Torah, it's actually beroiv, and okay, maybe 60, 100, or 200, but it's going to have a bittul. Here we're talking about exceptions to the rule, and for different reasons, like we said, avodah zarah and tevel, avodah zarah because it's avodah zarah, chum of kolshu, tevel because it's efshar lasaknoi, so therefore it's davish material, and regarding shmitik, it's not really a prohibited item, and again, therefore they're going to make it asr b'kolshu b'minoi, unlike the general consensus, which is that it's batal beroiv, or like we said, shishim, 100 or 200. Similarly, next halacha test says the Rambam, chametz b'pesach. Chametz b'pesach makes it forbidden also just a minute amount. Ava bishu misur, although it is from the Torah prohibitions. Now again, it's not including the general categories, and therefore, even shaloi b'minoi, which everything up until this point, even the more stringent type of isurim, shaloi b'minoi was totally nice and tam. Here it's going to be even mashu, and the reason for that is the prohibition of chametz is not an unlimited prohibition. In other words, it's a temporary isser, so therefore it's not even comparable to tevel and hektish, where those things are intrinsically infinite isser, but just that you could fix it through some other thing. Chametz Pesach is the actual isser itself is only for the days of Pesach. So therefore, the Rambam, it has its own halacha, and the reason it's Shavari Pesach. After Pesach, the whole mixture is going to be permitted. Like we explained in Hilchos Chametz Matzah, paragraph halacha hey. So the fikr, therefore, isa b'kolshu. Therefore, it makes the mixture forbidden, no matter what the ratio is, even the minute amount of chametz. Whether it's the same type, or even if it's not the same type, it's going to be isa b'kolshu. Again, the Rambam is talking about what are exceptions to these rules. Halacha yud, v'uadin l'tfuah chadasha. So too regarding the new grain, what's called chadash, the new grain which is forbidden. Shenis orva b'yishana melifnei amid. God makes with the old grain before the omer was brought. So the new grain wasn't yet permitted. So we're not comparing it to the previous halacha of Chametz Pesach, which that's more unique than the rest. Rather, we're comparing like tevel, where if it's the same type, it's going to be asur b'kolshu, again, unlike the general isurim. But with shalei b'minoi, it's going to be asur b'nais and tam. Here, asur b'kolshu, it's going to make it forbidden in a minute amount. Again, shari yesh material, just like tevel, because it has permitted. What do you mean has permitted? Shalach ha'emer yutakol, because after the emer is brought, it's all going to be permitted. So we don't allow ourselves the heter of bittul, of nullification, if you don't need to come onto that, because the actual issur will be permitted itself once the aim is brought. It says anything that has a permitter. Even if it's a rabbinic issur, could go in, for example, issur muktzah, on Yom Tiv, when something was set aside not to be used, or it just came about on Yom Tiv, which is rabbinic issur. The sages did not give a certain amount. Even one in many thousands is not going to be nullified. And the reason for that is because shariyesh derech sheyutaba, because there are ways that it's going to be permitted, because there are matirim. It's only for now that it's prohibited, but after Yom Tov it's going to be permitted. So therefore, for now we don't say bittul. Could go in hektish, for example, hektish or meiser sheni, and the second type, the kiyitzvah, and the things like that, where hektish could be permitted through redemption. Meiser sheni, you can bring it to Yerushalayim, or it could be given mechalid. And since there are matirin, so then we don't allow it to be permitted in its isser, in its prohibited state, by the laws of bittul, by nullification. Now halach yidalf. Avol ha'arla, regarding the fruits of the tree in its first 3 years when the fruits are prohibited. V'kilai kerem, regarding the prohibited mixture of a vineyard with other types of grains. V'chelav, and prohibited fats. V'dam, and blood, and b'kitzim, and again, and all other isurim in the Torah. And v'chein chumas, and also regarding the prohibition of chumas for non-kahanim. Nosnu chacham be'emshir, the sages did give a measurement. She'ein b'hem derech hetel chaladim, because there is no path to permit it to every single person. Because even chumas, which are permitted for kahanim, are always forbidden for zar. So there the halacha is different. There we'll have the halacha bittul, again, according to whatever the isser is, unlike the exceptions that we just mentioned before, that will be asr even with a kolshu. Now, says Ram halacha in Beis Yerali, it appears to me, that even things that have permitters, in this arb b'she'ena, if it got mixed with something that's not the same type, and it does not give a taste, then mutter is going to be permitted. Like we said, there it's only usher if it's nice and tam. The reason why Ram says Yerali is because he's disagreeing with the Rif and Masechet Chulin that says that if it has matirin, even einamini, it's not going to be batal. But the Ram explains the logic for his opinion. He says lo yezesh yesh lo matirin. You can't say that this cases of that thing that have permitters should be chamam mitavel. It should be more stringent than untyped produce. Shariyesh l'saknei tevel it also, so to speak, has permitted, as the first case the Rambam brought, where you could fix it, you could take off Trumas HaMais and then it's going to be permitted. The Ava Pikin, even so, Shaloi B'minai, when it's mixed with something that's not the same type, but nice and tam, it's only forbidden if it gives a taste commission, like we explained in Allah Chavav. So therefore, the same thing can apply to all these other cases, Hektish, Maisacheni, or anything that has Matirim, it's Be'enamini with a different type of element, it's only going to be if it's nice and tam. Says the Rambam, Alti Tam al Chametz and Pesach, and you're going to wonder, hey, what's Chametz and Pesach? Like we mentioned, that we pointed out that that's in the exception that we said that there it's going to be even be'enamini, it's going to be asur b'mashu b'kolshu. Shatar that's because the Torah says in Shemai Sid Beis, Kol machmetzos le'sechelu, any leavening one shouldn't eat. Lafikach ichmir, by therefore they were stringent with it, Kamish like we explained in Halacha test, where there it's asur b'kolshu, not only b'mina but even shalai b'minai. But again, all the other halachas are not like that, but rather like tevel, where be'enamin is going to be asur if it gives a taste. Now, Lochi Gimel says, Ram be'eloheim hashiyum shnas chacham. So, what are the measurements that the sages did give for all other sum in the Torah, where we say that there it is going to be a limited quantity to make it forbidden? So, you have in one category is hatruma, which that's given to the kohen, approximately 150. If a trumas meiser, which is actually the Levi gets 1/10, a tenth of that goes to the kohen. Ba'chala, which is a portion of the dough that's taken to the kohen. Ba'bikurim, the first fruits of the 7 types of fruits that Eretz is praised with, which is brought up in a basket and given to the kohanim. Oilin be'echad u'meya, that if those entities which are prohibited for non-kohanim falls into chulin, they are batal in the ratio of 101. V'tzarch laharim. What you have to do is, if a saw of truma falls into 100, you have to separate from that mixture one sub truma and give it to the kohen, because even though it's nullified, that's regarding prohibitory law. But regarding monetary law, it's stealing from the tribe, from the Kahanim, as Rambam explained later in Halachat Azvav, where you still have to pay it forward. So therefore, you have to separate, and then that will be the laws of bittul. And the mitzvah from zemazeh. And these entities that we just spoke about here, they combine one with the other. In other words, if a half a saw of truma mixes with half a saw, let's say, of challah, or one of these other ones, into less than 100 of chulin, it's all going to be us. And the reason for that is because all these are called in the Torah truma. So though they're not all truma, but they're called truma, so they all combine as if they're the same isser. And so to b'chein, prusa shalach mapanim, a piece of the showbread, which is hektish on the shulchan all week, which some explain that we're talking about when it's tummy, if that falls in l'tech prusa shachulin, into pieces of bread that are chulin, unconsecrated, it's going to be nullified in a ratio of 101. Ketzad, how so? So kamach me'achad me'elu. If you have a saw with certain measurement of flour of one of these prohibited entities, or saw mikulim, or like we said, or mixes together from all of them together, she'naflu me'yasah kamach shalchum, where it falls into 100, a measurement of flour of chulin, but it's all mixed together. So like we said, me'ir min hakol sa'ach, so you have to separate from this whole mixture one saw, keneged saw she'naflu, correlated to the saw that fell in, and you give that to the hektish, and the rest is permitted to every single person. Now, nafla pachas may falls into less than 100. Nasa kol madum, everything becomes this mixture of hektish and chulin, of truma chulin, and therefore, again, permitted to a kohen, but forbidden to that of a non-kohen. Now, the Rambam continues in Halach Yidal regarding nullification in a ratio of 200 to 1. Says the Rambam, ha'arlo, the fruits of the first 3 years of a tree, v'kila karim, and the forbidden mixture planted in the vineyard, they're the ratio of nullification, unlike that of what we just said regarding truma, which is 100 to 1. Here it's 200 to 1. And here too, mitzvah from zemzeh. These two, Orl and Klai Kerem, they combine one to the other. So although they're actually two different prohibitions, two different titles, but since they have the same measurement of nullification, which actually I learned out one from the other, so therefore they combine. And here ve'in tzarich laharm. Here you don't have to separate anything from the forbidden mixture, the amount of the prohibited item that fell in. Says the Ram Kitzah, what's the case talking about? Revi'ah shel yain arla. Let's say if a quarter of a log of wine of arla, a kilai kerem, or the wine from the forbidden vineyard of the forbidden mixture, falls in. Or that revi'is of the cup of wine was a combination of those two isurim. They fell into 200 revi'is of kosher wine. Everything's permitted because you have the ratio of 200 to 1. And like we say, you don't have to separate any from like the amount of prohibited item that fell in to take that out. Now, enough of the bachas means that, but it falls into less than 200. Everything's made forbidden to have benefit. Now, Halachat Azvav, the Rambam explains the discrepancy in the previous halachas. Why do we say in Halachah Yud that you have to separate the amount of truma that fell in? So even though in regarding prohibitory law we said that, but you say we still have to take out the amount that fell in. How come by arla and klai we don't require to take out the amount of arla klai that fell in? So the Rambam, because regarding prohibitory law, it's all permitted because it's nullified. But Truma Mammon Kahanim, but Truma is the monetary element that's owned by the Kahanim. For that monetary law, that's not nullified, and therefore that would have to be taken out and given that amount at least to the Kahanim. Now, Lafika, therefore, said the Rambam, called Truma She'en Kahanim Makbinla, if it's any type of Truma that the Kahanim are not particular about, Truma Saklisim, like the Truma of some type of inferior type of figs, V'acharuv, and carobs, Zusurim, Sheba or the Edomite type of barley, that which is not significant, they don't even care about, then in Tzachlam, you don't have to separate anything, because regarding Easter, it's Batal, regarding Mammon, the Kahanim don't care about it. Halakha design. Now, why is it that Truma, a ratio of 100 to 1 is sufficient, and by some reason the Arla and the Klai Kam require a ratio of 200 to 1? The reason is because they're not just forbidden to be eaten like Truma, they're even forbidden to have benefit. So because of that added stringency, it requires double. Now, so why is sufficient a ratio of 100 to 1 by Trumas? Shari Trumas Maisa, where they get the number 100 to 1? Shari Trumas Maisa, because by Trumas Maisa, which is Echad Mimeya, it's a 100th from the original produce, because it's Maisa from Maiser. You give a Levi a 10th, and the 10th from that he gives to the Kohen. That's Trumas Maisa, that's 100th. That's Umakad Shakal, and that makes the whole original crop forbidden. Because the Pasuk says that you take off the sacred from it, meaning you give that Trumas Maiser to the Kohen. Now, Amacham the sage said, what do you mean Es Mikdashai? Davashat Meir Mimeno. Something that you're separating from this grain, which is Trumas Maiser, this 100th, it's telling us, Im Chazal L'Toiche, it would fall back into the pairs where it was taken out from. Mikacha, it would make it sanctified, it would make it forbidden. So you see this ratio of the Trumas from the halacha of 100th, was 100 to 1, from the Trumas Maiser, which is 100th, that it would make it forbidden if it fell back inside it. Now Rambam continues halacha Yitzayin regarding a different type of a nullification ratio, that of the 60 to 1, and things that are similar to 60 to 1. Says Rambam, Shari Surah Shabbat. Now, all other prohibitions in the Torah, and the reason why it says in the Torah, because it's coming to exclude rabbinic, which actually doesn't require 60 to 1, but rather 59 to 1. Kulam, all of them, for example, Pesar Shkatzim Mermasim, the flesh of the teeming and crawling dead bugs, vermin, V'chelev and forbidden fats, V'dam and blood, V'kirzbem, all those similar type of things. Shurim B'shishim, that measurement to nullify the Isser if it has a ratio of 60, Ketzat household. Kizayis chelev kolais, let's say I have an olive size of the forbidden fats of the kidneys. Shenafel tech shishim kizayis mechiv olive that falls into 60 olives of the permitted fats of the fatty tail. So together it's 61 pieces of olive size fats. Hakal to everything can be permitted. Now nafel apachim mishim falls into less than 60 of the heter. Hakalas is all going to be forbidden. Let's say even falls in a barley size of the forbidden fats, which the Rambam is coming to tell us that even the halacha applies of chatzi shir, which you don't get lashes, but it's not sufficient in the laws of bittul until you have 60 to 1, regarding if it's prohibited or not. If you have this even barley size of fats, so you have to have like 60 barley sizes of the permitted fats to nullify it. And so too regarding other prohibitions. And so too the fats of the sciatic nerve of the giranash, which is a forbidden part of the animal, where it falls into a pot of meat, you evaluate it with a ratio of 60. And the fats of the giranash itself is not counted from that. Rather, you need to have 60 besides the giranash that fell in to nullify those fats. Now, although the fats of the giranash itself is rabbinic, like we explained, so if it's rabbinic, generally you don't require 60 to 1. But since the giranash is its own entity, it's a whole ligament by itself, they're stringent it like the way the biblical law is. And biblical law requires a nullification of 60 to 1. Now, the ligament itself, we don't evaluate for it, and it doesn't make anything prohibited. The reason is because the ligament itself doesn't give a taste, so we don't have to nullify it. You can't eat it, you have to take it out, but we don't have to evaluate regarding how much flavor it's giving inside the pot of the kosher food. But the shuman, the fat itself, which is rabbinically prohibited, that you would require nullification, and the chiddush is that it requires 60 to 1, like the way it is regarding biblical law, although it's only rabbinically forbidden. Now, but regarding the udder of a cow, any animal, where if it was cooked with kosher meat, so that's beshishim. There, yes, you need a ratio of 60 to 1, because it's rabbinically forbidden, but a chol min aminyan, the udder itself, its meat is considered part of the kosher meat to nullify the prohibited entity. Why? Since the halacha of udder being forbidden is rabbinic commission, like we explained over there in halacha Yud Beis, so Hekel B'Shur, so they were lenient regarding its measurement, where we're going to count the udder itself as part of the measurement. That's why he said that really there you'll need 59 to 1, and only 60 to 1, because you're actually counting the kal itself to nullify the prohibition that it's introducing into the pot of meat. Now, halacha Yud test, so we spoke about 60 to 1, 59 to 1. Now it says Rambam, if you have an egg that inside you find a chick, that was cooked with the permitted eggs, if there's actually 61 and the prohibited egg, which together is 62 eggs, then it's all going to be permitted. But let's say it was only with 60, together with it 61, everything is going to be forbidden. Why? I thought 60 to 1, even regarding biblical law, is sufficient. The reason is because this chick, which wasn't slaughtered, this is prohibited, it's its own creature, so that's why it's more than just that of Gira Nasha, which we say it takes it up one notch. That's because it's not its own creature, although it's its own entity. Here it's its own creature. So also Hekabah, here they made some type of recognizable stringency, but they actually add on to the measurement, and therefore it's not enough to have 60 to 1, you actually have to have 61 to 1. Now, halacha chaf. Aval beyas oif tameh. That's regarding if you have an egg with a chick inside. Aval beyas oif tameh, but if you have the egg of a non-kosher animal, shenishakon bey oif tameh, that was cooked with the eggs of a kosher animal, of a kosher bird, lo sa'isem. So actually, that doesn't even make the kosher eggs forbidden, because it's not emitting any taste. Now, obviously we're talking about where it wasn't peeled. Whereas by an egg that had a chick, even if it wasn't peeled, you can make it forbidden because that oozes out from the chick through the egg itself, but the egg that doesn't have a chick, even though it's from a non-kosher egg, would not make it forbidden. Now, but if let's say you mixed it all together, you beat the eggs, and you mixed them. Or let's say the non-kosher egg, or the egg from a kosher species, but it was a treifa, which is also, we call it non-kosher, with other kosher eggs, again, that will be like the regular halacha of being evaluated of a ratio of 60 to 1. Halacha Valve. Now, what did the sages rely on when they came up with this measurement of 60 to 1 for the nullification of Isser and Heter? Says Rambam, Shari Murim Me'el Nazir, because what's elevated from the ram of a Nazir. Nazir, someone who takes a vow not to drink wine and not to come tummy to mace, different laws, and when he finishes his Naziris, he has to bring a ram. Now, the elevated part, which is the part that's given to the kohen, V'hi Raya, that's the foreleg, is Echad Meshish Mishar Ayel. That's 1/60 of the rest of the ram. Now, Vehimis B'Shelas that is considered like hektish, and it's cooked with the rest of the non-hektish part of the ram, which is eaten by the rest of the people. And it doesn't make the rest forbidden. Shlomo says in the pasuk, that the kohen takes the cooked foreleg from the ram. So obviously you see, because since there's 60 in regards to that one foreleg, that is the ratio of not making forbidden, because it's nullified in the ratio of the rest, which is, you see this measurement of 60 to 1. Now, halacha Beis Ram continues regarding adding in one more variable, not just the halacha that we spoke about previously with min b'mina, but min b'mina and something else. Says Rambam, min b'mina v'dava achash nesarza. If you have two things of the same type with some other thing that's all mixed together. For example, he gives a case. If you have a pot that had the fats of the fatty tail, which is a permitted fats, ugrisin and beans, which are also permitted item. So these two things, you have min and davar acher. Now you have min b'minoi, you have a isser and a heter of the same type of thing, which are fats, because the fats of the kidneys are prohibited, and davar acher, which is beans. So you have min b'minoi, the two types of fats, kosher and not kosher, and the davar acher, which are the beans. Everything gets dissolved all together in this pot, one big melting pot. V'nasa guf echad becomes one entity. So the halach is royin eschele va'alya v'sagrisen kilohim guf echad. With you, the fats of the fatty tail and the beans, as if they're one thing, because they're all heter. Umesharon chele v'klois b'grisen va'alya, and therefore you can evaluate the fats of the kidneys, which are the not kosher, in the beans and in the fatty tail. You view the isser, if it's giving taste, into this permitted mixture. If it was a ratio of 60 to 1, it's going to be permitted. Because you can't taste it. It got mixed into both these permitted items, and therefore you're not going to evaluate just the one with the other. You can evaluate in regards to the whole pot. Halacha of Gimel. But what the Trumas and the Sarva the Sham B'Mei, same thing is regarding Trumas that get mixed in to evaluate it in the ratio of 100 to 1. The Kilai Kerama Arla Shar, same thing regarding prohibited mixture of a vineyard or the Arla fruits to evaluate there, like we said, the ratio is 200 to 1, meaning if it's Mimamina B'Dava Achar, it's going to be that you're going to evaluate the prohibited thing in the Dava Achar and the mint to see if it's giving taste to them together. Now, related, the Rambam continues Halacha Chavdal regarding when something prohibited falls in, you evaluate it based on the whole pot, as the Rambam says. When you evaluate regarding all prohibited entities, like we said, whether it's something that requires a bitl of 60 to 1, May whether it requires a ratio of 100 to 1, whether it requires a ratio of 200 to 1, the halach is Mesharin, you evaluated Bamarak, in the gravy of Atfon, the spices of Akoshesh B'Gedera, whatever's in the pot, and even of Amasha Balakadera, even what the pot absorbed, after the prohibited entity fell in, according to what you could evaluate, because like Ram says, you can't know exactly precisely how much the pot absorbed, but you can evaluate based on all the entities that are in the pot, even according to the pot itself, according to how much it absorbed. Did it, after it's spreading out and disseminating everywhere, is it going to have anywhere concentration that's going to be less than 60 to 1, then it's going to be usher, but if it's going to be less than that, if it's going to be more than 60 to 1, then it's going to be permitted. Now, Allah of Chafei, the Ram continues regarding the prohibition of initially nullifying something that's prohibited. As Ram says, although there is halach of bittul that it becomes permitted, it becomes nullified, but initially, it's forbidden to go ahead and deliberately go ahead and nullify a biblical prohibition to add on more heter to make it that it'll be nullified in the mixture. Now, vimbital, if someone did nullify it, it's permitted because ultimately it's nullified. But va'ava became, in spite of that concept, the sages penalized the person if he did it deliberately. For us, I call, and they said it's all forbidden. Now, says Rabbi Yeroli, it appears to me, since it's a rabbinic penalty, we're only going to penalize and make it forbidden, this mixture, to the one who nullified this isser. But for others, it's all going to be permitted. As Rambam says, Allah above, Ketzad, how so? Let's say a saw, measurement of arla falls into 100 saw of kosher. Now, everything becomes forbidden because arla requires a ratio of 200 to 1. Here it's a mixture of 100 to 1. Says the Rambam, lo yavi mei saw acheres. He's not allowed to bring 100 saw, other 100 saw, v'tzarf and to combine the kaddish tal bech masab that should be nullified in a ratio of 200 to 1. Then avavas again, if he violates and does this, everything will be permitted for others, but not for the one who's doing it himself. That's regarding biblical law. But regarding rabbinical law, says the Rambam, there you could even initially go ahead and nullify it. As Rambam says, if milk falls into a pot of chicken, is giving a prohibited milk and meat taste in this pot of chicken, you could keep on adding chicken until it nullifies the taste. Anything like this, because the Isra Basa B'chalav is only regarding animal meat, not chicken meat. It's rabbinically prohibited. And since rabbinic prohibition, one could go ahead and create a situation of bitl likatchila, of nullifying that rabbinic Isra. Now, Allah Chavchas, the Ram continues regarding another leniency, regarding Tam Levgam. As Ram says, Kfar Be'an already explained, if a prohibited entity gives its taste into something permitted, so Nesakol, everything's forbidden. And that's why he said, that's why Shishim, it nullifies the taste. When we can't ascertain, if you could, then you taste it. Now, but Medrum, when do we say this, that the taste is going to make the permitted entity forbidden, is Beshbichai. When the prohibited element is making it better in the permitted thing, it's giving a good taste, but albeit a prohibited entity, so therefore it's forbidden. But if, let's say, this forbidden item that's falling into the permitted thing is actually detracting from the taste of the permitted item, the hifsa time it's causing a loss to the good taste of the permitted item. Then even though the tarfus is here mixed in, it's going to be permitted. Now, but as long as the Rambam says he qualifies, has to be that it gave a bad taste from the beginning till the end. But let's say initially it gives a bad taste, but at the end it's going to make it better, or initially made it better. Although at the end it's going to make it worse, there's also then it's going to be forbidden, because ultimately it does give an element of shvach, and thus of a tarayvus of Issa. Now, Allah Ram continues regarding how does one inspect regarding the taste of the tarayvus of the forbidden mixture. So Allah says, who gets to taste it to see if it's giving it a taste or not, or if it's giving a good taste or bad taste. So if it's a mixture of truma with chulin, so although it's forbidden for non-kahanim, the kohen can taste it. who he's permitted to eat truma. And if the taste of truma is recognizable, everything's a forbidden mixture of truma and chulin. And if not, then it's going to be permitted to even the non-kanim. Of Hilchos Trumas and the laws of Trumas in Perkei Gimel and Perkei Daled, Yisbar Din Amaduma. There, the Rambam explains exactly the parameters of this halacha of the mixtures of Truma and Chulin. Halacha Lamed. Now, let's say it was a mixture of meat and milk. Oy, or Yain Nesech, V'yain Arlo, V'klei Kerem, or it's wine that's from libations of idolatry, or wine from an Arlo, a grapevine, or wine from a vineyard that was mixed with other grains. Shenaf Ladash, where that wine fell into honey. And the reason is that although Yain Nesech, we said, is Asa B'mashu, and not in the laws of Bittel, that's only B'mina, but here it's Einamin, it's mixed with not another type of wine, but rather with honey. Let's say dead bugs that are forbidden, that they get mixed with vegetables, or anything like that. So here, he can't have a Yisrael taste it, because if it is giving a taste, he just ate non-kosher. But a Gentile tasted. But some of them rely on what he says. If he says, I don't taste anything, it tastes like regular vegetables to me. Or Yishomai says, yes, bitam, I do taste something else, but it's a bad taste, right? It makes it worse. Everything's going to be permitted. But as long as as long as it's not going to end up giving a good taste, like we explained in the previous halacha. Now, if there's no Gentile to taste it, so then then we evaluate according to the measurements that we said, b'shishim with 60 of Vimeya, or 100 of Messiah, or 200, again, respectively, depending on whatever the Isser is, whether it be regular Isurim, whether it be Trumas, or whether it be that of Arla and Klei HaKerem. Now, halacha Lamed Avram continues regarding unique mixtures that have different types of halachas. Achbar, regarding a mouse, shenafal l'sheicher elochem, it falls into beer or into vinegar. Now, since those are very strong beverages, they're quick to absorb, and therefore it's like pickling it, and therefore it's like cooking it. So here, mishar ma'isa b'shishim. Here, we're going to evaluate the prohibited mouse according to a ratio of 60-1 in the beer or the vinegar. The reason for that is, we're concerned, which the Gemara does not resolve this question, maybe, although a rat, it's not going to give a good taste, but maybe in beer or vinegar actually does give a good taste. So we don't know, so we would have to evaluate it based on a ratio of 60-1. Now, but definitely if a rat falls into wine or oil or honey, mutter, it's going to be good, it can be permitted. And even if it's giving a taste, because it's less than the ratio of 60-1, because it gives a bad taste. All these beverages, wine, honey, oil, they all need to be aromatic. When this putrefies it, the most of the time it gives it a bad taste, it distracts from the taste, and therefore it's not going to make it awesome. The Rambam continues regarding the halacha of roasting meat with a prohibited entity. As Rambam says, Gedishat Saloi Bechelboi. If one roasted a kid goat with its fats, meaning they never removed the fats that are inside the goat, which are the fats in the kidneys, fats in the intestines, which are the forbidden fats, they didn't. They just roasted the animal with its fats. So asalechel, you're not allowed to eat from the goat, even from the end of its ear, which is very far from where the fats are. The reason for that is because the fats get absorbed in all the limbs, because the fat bubbles throughout the animals, and it's going to go even up until the tip of the goat's ear. Now, this is as long as it gives it a good taste and gives it taste. Therefore, if it doesn't have that characteristics, let's say the goat was lean, thin, it didn't have the fats of the kidneys, not the fats of the intestines, rather very little, like a ratio of only 1 of 60. So then, like we said, it's not giving taste because it's bottled in the ratio of 60-1. So you could do is you could just peel away and eat until you reach the fats. And obviously you're not going to eat the fats, but the rest of the animal you could eat. And if there was a thigh that was roasted with the giranasha, the sciatic nerve that's supposed to be removed, it was not removed. It was eaten with it. Now, the fats of the gid are rabbinically prohibited. So what you do is you peel and you eat because the fats of the gid are very lean. It doesn't really bubble so much like fats, and it just really stays in its place. And even if it's going to bubble, not enough to give a taste. So here too, you peel away and you eat until you reach to the sciatic nerve, and then you throw it away. Same thing is if one roasts a fully intact animal after he slaughtered it, he took the whole animal, he roasted it. He didn't remove not the threads of tissue, Assuros, and not the forbidden membranes, which we spoke about in the previous paragraph regarding blood or fats. So here also, what you can do is you just peel away and you eat because the fat is again lean and it doesn't bubble so much in the meat. it's not like the regular fats, it's just on the membranes there is some, and on the tissue. So when you reach to the prohibited entity, you cut it and you throw it away. Because the ligaments themselves, which are talking about here, like by the Giranasha, doesn't give taste to evaluate in it. So again, you could eat up until there and then throw it out. One's not supposed to roast kosher slaughtered meat with non-kosher, either because non-kosher species, because it wasn't properly slaughtered, in one oven. Now, even if they're not touching one another, the reason for that is because the aroma that's prohibited from the prohibited entity is going into, in the same oven, into the permitted piece of meat. Now, if one did roast them together in the same oven, harizim, what's going to be permitted? And even if the prohibited meat was fatty, harbor very much, and the permitted is lean, and so that would seem to, like, that fatty element is its aroma is wafting through the oven and it's going to go into the kosher lean animal. Because says the Rambam, aroma doesn't make something forbidden. Because the only thing that makes the meat forbidden would be taste of the prohibited entity and not the aroma. So although initially one shouldn't do that, but after the fact it's going to be permitted. Now, and Halacha Lamadal, Ram continues regarding mixtures of permitted and forbidden pieces of meat. It says Ram, B'sar nevela maliach. If there's non-kosher meat, meaning it wasn't properly slaughtered, salted nevela meat, shenivlal imay, and it's important that it was mixed with b'sar shchuta, which seems to be that it was not salted, the slaughtered meat. So the meats got mixed together. Hariz and Nesser. So now the kosher meats are going to be forbidden. Now, if they were both salted, actually it would not be forbidden because it's called, when it's busy emitting taste because it's salted, it can't be absorbing at the same time. But we're talking about that the kosher meat is not salted. So the nevela meat is salted and therefore it's busy sending everything out. Like when we salt meat, it sends out everything inside of it. And in the kosher meat, it's not salted, so it's absorbing everything. So because the essence of the non-kosher meat is nevlas, b'guf basar shchut, is getting absorbed in the actual slaughtered meat. And more of the efshalamikan, you can't ascertain over here. Loyalatam, not the taste, because they're both meat. And you don't know the measurement, you don't know how much is coming out. So therefore, the kosher meat is going to be forbidden. And so too regarding the flesh of a salted non-kosher piece of fish. Where you mix with it a kosher unsalted fish. The kosher fish is going to be forbidden because of the brine of the non-kosher fish. But if let's say the other way around, let's say the kosher piece of fish was salted, and the non-kosher fish was the unsalted one, then the salted piece of the kosher fish is not going to be forbidden. Although the non-kosher fish that's unsalted is going to be absorbing from the salt, it's not going to be absorbing so much salt from the brine that it's going to be now considered, so to speak, the salty fish to then emit back out into the kosher fish. That much is not going to be, and therefore the kosher fish is going to remain kosher. Dag tame, shekavashim dag tar. If one has non-kosher fish that's being pickled with kosher fish, everything's forbidden, because obviously they're mixing together. Elam kin hayat tame, only if the non-kosher, meaning the brine that came out from the non-kosher fish, will be echad mimisayim atar, be not more than 1 of 200 from the kosher fish. Now, although generally regarding all of these surim, we go with 60, not with 200, except for Orlin Klayakem, but the brine of fish is very strong, so therefore it's going to give taste into the kosher fish more than regular surim, and therefore the Chazal gave it the measurement of a ratio of 200 to 1, but if it has less than that of 200, then the kosher fish is going to be forbidden.